it's something that would just make you mad. And I said, the racial wealth gap is an illusion. It's an illusion. And in a headline-driven society, people are gonna, for good reason, be very offended. They're gonna say, "What are you talking about? What do you mean it's an illusion? It's not an illusion. What are the gap? Black people definitely have less wealth than white people." We know all that. Absolutely. I know I've analyzed that data upside down, inside out, and backwards. That's 100% true. The racial wealth gap definitely does exist in that sense. That black people have less wealth than white people. That we have, in fact, we have less wealth than Hispanic people. We have less wealth than Asian people. We have less wealth than Jewish people. We have less wealth than everybody. The reason I said it was an illusion is more specific to the formal definition of an illusion. So what I'm going to do is look up the word illusion. I'm going to read the definition to you, and I want you to kind of try to understand. Here we go. An illusion is a thing that is or is likely to be wrongly perceived or interpreted by the senses. It's something that is likely to be wrongly perceived. Another definition is a deceptive appearance or impression. And then the last one is a false idea or belief. So why in the world would I, as a guy who understands black wealth at such a deep level, why in the world would I say that the racial wealth gap is an illusion? That just sounds insane. What's wrong with you boys? Let me slap you for that one. Well, the reason I said it's an illusion and what led me to this conclusion, again, after doing finance for 30 years, is I said, I think that it's not like it's not there, but it's a little bit of a distraction. It's a little bit of a distraction in a couple of ways. Number one, when you're constantly talking about gaps, you're using white people kind of as the gold standard, right? You're saying if we catch up with white people, then we will reach our fullest potential, right? That once we catch up to white people, everything is good, life is great. We're there. We've made it, y'all. We caught up with white people, and I don't believe that. I don't believe white people are the gold standard. I don't think that the white man is some sort of living God that we're just perpetually supposed to compare ourselves to. I think that if anybody going to be the God, it's going to be us, right? Not to get into some black supremacist talk, but really, you the original man, not anybody else. That's the first thing. The second piece is that this constant conversation about the racial wealth gap tends to lean into discussions about things like equality. And equality is kind of a funny thing. Um, you know, I first of all, it's not necessarily a practical concept to ever think that people can be equal. Right. That's the first thing. Equality really doesn't happen in the competitive world. It's something that you kind of think might happen. It's something that sounds good and it feels good, but life ain't fair, right? And it never will be. And then second of all, it really takes away the potential of what you could do. Being equal to white people is not their final destination. Maybe if you wanted to pick a destination, maybe your destination would be to get ahead of everybody, right? To win the race. And then also another reason that the racial wealth gap to me was an illusion is that I think that when you're constantly focused on what other people are doing and what other people have, you stop seeing the power of who you are and what you have. You're constantly looking over there and you're not able to see what you got going on over here. There was I remember when Carl Lewis was racing Ben Johnson, and Ben Johnson was an up and coming sprinter and kicking Carl's butt. And they were asking Carl, like, so are you paying attention to what Ben is doing? Did you see Ben on the track? And he says, no, I wasn't looking at him. I didn't see him at all. But they replayed the race, and the whole time Carl Lewis couldn't run as fast as he normally was because the whole time he's constantly looking over to see where Ben Johnson is. So because he did not keep his eye on the prize, he slowed himself down by constantly watching Ben Johnson, constantly trying to see how fast he was going. And so I don't think that the racial wealth gap is non-existent. Of course it exists. But I think that it's a distraction from what we really want to focus on, which is really just being the best that we can be. So that's the first thought on this. Now, the other thought I want to dig into is some of these civil rights organizations. So let me read a little bit of what Dr. Anderson said about civil rights organizations. He said, every time Black poverty is pointed out as a problem, there is a rush to eradicate the poverty of newly arriving immigrants or to totally eradicate the poverty of poor whites. Throughout history, the prevailing belief is that you cannot deal with low income and poverty of blacks until you have done it for all poor whites. Even black civil rights leaders accept such a belief and will rush to help poor whites before helping their own people. According to Oliver and Shapiro, poverty level whites control nearly as many mean net financial assets as the highest earning blacks. So did y'all know that literally the poorest whites have the same amount of wealth as the wealthiest blacks? That's very scary. Economic data of this nature is publicized constantly. The black civil rights focus is out of alignment. Why does black leadership focus on civil rights for everybody except black people? Why are black civil rights leaders now urging black Americans to help poor whites? Like, that's kind of crazy. Like, that's kind of ridiculous. And so I'm gonna read a little bit of this, and I'm actually tie it back to something that we've been talking about this week. We've been talking a lot about the NFL, and how many of you, give me a yes in the chat, or if you saw or if you've been following what happened to that poor guy, Damar Hamlin, that played for the Buffalo Bills. Give me a yes. Okay, if you've been following, how many of you are emotionally affected? Give me a yes if you saw it and you were sad. Maybe you wanted to shed a tear. Your heart went out for his family. You were praying for him. You know, you were feeling emotionally connected to this guy. And think about this. You know, a week ago, none of us knew who he was, myself included. We knew who the Buffalo Bills were, but we didn't know who Damar Hamlin is. But now everybody knows his name, right? And so I want to tie this back to this because there's a bigger issue here, and I think that despite this tragedy, you know, in light of this whole tragedy with Damar Hamlin, it creates an opportunity to really address all the other thousands of Damar Hamlins that are out there. You know, he's not the only athlete. First of all, he's not the only athlete to even have a heart attack recently. There have been other athletes that have had heart attacks. That's a whole nother conversation. But also, he's certainly not the only athlete to have been significantly injured. There are thousands and thousands of athletes who have sued the NFL because they can't even get a basic pension. And also with Damar, his situation is, I think he's going to make about $800,000 this year. He was scheduled for that. Now that he's injured, his checks are going to stop. And this happens to a lot of athletes. Many of them are black. So this really leads to a conversation about sort of understanding the wealth disparities in this country, where they come from. A lot of wealth disparities are connected to rules, laws, customs, and the way things are done in this capitalist / racist society. So let me read a little bit more here, and then I'm going to actually jump into that other topic, because I think this is a great opportunity to apply Powernomics training to a real world scenario where there is a disproportionate amount of power between NFL owners and NFL players. Give me a yes if you understand what I'm saying. If you're talking about Powernomics, that's what this book is called. Powernomics, power, economics. Who has more economic power in the NFL, the owners or the players? Who has more economic power in the NFL, the owners or the players? Powernomics. Power affects your economics, and economics affects your power. They feed into each other. Okay, so with this situation with Damar Hamlin, it's a really fascinating exploration into how economic power plays out in various situations. So let me, particularly just given the fact that the athlete is seen as an asset of the owner. There's a reason why the owner of the Buffalo Bills is worth about $6.7 billion. Most of his former players are not anywhere close to that. They're not even 1,000th of his net worth. Okay, so let me keep reading here. In the absence of leadership, it is imperative that Black Americans become singularly devoted to wealth creation and wealth redistribution in Black communities. This means using all devices, especially local municipal governments and Black organizations, to craft and promote ideologies and programs that enhance wealth building, whether through personal savings or simply by keeping money in Black communities. Personal savings or keeping money in Black communities. I'm going to underline that because I'm going to tie that back to what happened with Damar Hamlin in terms of understanding what's really going on in terms of the Powernomics dimension of even professional sports. How is it that you have the best athletes in the world and you're making the least amount of money from professional sports? How is it that you that your athletes are taking the biggest risk of anybody, but they end up with the least money? How is it that they're doing the most work and ending up with the least amount of money, right? How is it that an owner like a Jerry Jones, got caught being racist, got caught. Remember, it would happen right during the Kyrie Irving thing. So on one hand, you have Kyrie Irving, who retweets something that the Jewish people don't like. He's slapped around like a little boy. He's told to, sit down, shut up. I'm fining you all this money. You can't play until you apologize. You got to go through re-education, like literally chastising him, taking him out to the back of the bar, spanking him like a child. Same time, Jerry Jones is caught in a picture from the 1950s where he's bullying some black kids for trying to go to a white school. Jerry Jones doesn't even have to address it. Jerry Jones has barely addressed it, if he's acknowledged it at all. Jerry Jones doesn't have to apologize. Jerry Jones doesn't have to do any of that. Now, some of us, we're trained to just be mad about that. We're trained to call it out. We're like, oh, man, that ain't right. That ain't fair. That ain't fair. And then LeBron says something about it. We're like, yeah, you tell him, LeBron, you tell him. All that's just chip, chatter, and that's just chirping. That's all it is talk. Jerry Jones has not at all on any level seen any form of, shall we say, remorse or even reputational damage. Yeah, he's not paid any price for that picture, right? We know that if he were black and the situation were reversed, we know that the situation or the outcome would be very different. So why is it that Jerry Jones can just sort of have this open scandal and have no consequences? How is that? I mean, what simultaneously Kyrie Irving pretty much did nothing and faced all the consequences in the world. Well, to understand it properly, I mean, you could sit back and just complain about it, that's what we're trained to do. We get it out. We become very emotional. We react to it. We're constantly mad. We're constantly yelling and screaming about stuff. Or you can sit back and try to understand the powernomics dimension of why that disparity exists. It's because powernomics and power kind of makes its own rules. All the rules that you think apply, all these things that these BS lies or fake beliefs that you've been trained to, that you've been indoctrinated on, like fairness and equality, that's not really real. I mean, and when you're reacting because it's not fair. It's not fair. In fact, give me a yes or no. Give me a yes or no. How many of you feel that it's not fair that Jerry Jones could do what he did and have no consequences, and Kyrie Irving could literally do nothing and have no and literally be punished like a child? How many of y'all think that's unfair? Give me a yes if you think that's. Let's just acknowledge that. No, it ain't fair. It ain't fair. That ain't right. That ain't right. Right. So let's get that out of our system. It ain't fair. Right. But again, we have to go back to this idea. Number one, we know life isn't fair, and in the world of powernomics, fair doesn't even exist. There's no such thing as fair. Who taught you about fair? I mean, I can understand if you want to go to the state fair, but that's the only place where fair actually applies in the real world. So when you're yelling and screaming and mad about it, you're mad because it is a reality that is inconsistent with the theory and the fantasy that we were taught as children, that life's going to be fair. They got to treat black people with fairness. And that's just not how powernomics works. Jerry Jones has no consequences because Jerry Jones he's worth $18 billion. Jerry Jones has no consequences because Jerry Jones is the boss. Jerry Jones can go to a meeting of anybody in the Dallas Cowboys organization, and if they're late to the meeting, then they're going to be punished. Jerry can arrive whenever he wants. The meeting starts when Jerry walks into the room. And this is not just true for Jerry Jones. I understand that quite a bit. I run my own business. When I have a meeting, you got to be on time. You got to respect Dr. Watkins' time. But if I get there late, then the meeting starts when I walk in the door, because that's the space that me and my people control. And understanding these dynamics and getting away from this nonsense about what's fair and what's not is something that you have to talk to your children about. I talk to my, I got a 19-year-old in the house. I'm his bonus dad, but I love him though. I love him like a son, and he is my son. And we work together, and we had to explain that to him. We every morning to help him have structure. I said, if you're going to be in this house, we got to do some structured things on a daily basis that's going to really help you level up into the man that you need to be. So I said, one thing I need you to do is every morning we're going to have a meeting at 10 o'clock. 10 a.m. I need you to call me at 10 a.m. Let me know you're out of bed. Let me know we're getting started, blah, blah, blah. So he would call me every morning at 10. Well, sometimes I would be busy. I can't answer the phone at 10. And so then he didn't call. He didn't make the 10 a.m. meeting. And I said, well, wait, what the hell's going on? Like, you didn't do what you were supposed to do. He said, well, you didn't show up at 10. Like I called you and you weren't there at 10. And that's when me and his mother had to explain to him, Boyce is the boss. So you're not the boss. You can't, the same rules don't apply to you. Like that, you're not the same. You're not at the same level in this organization. You're the employee. He's the employer. Now, when you become the boss, then you get to make the rules. And just the little conversations like that to kind of slap that whole nonsense about fairness out of his head. Like, man, get up out of here with that fair talk. Ain't nothing fair. It's about power, right? So really, when I see what happened with this poor guy in the Buffalo Bills, Damar Hamlin, I really see this horrible power dynamic that plays out in the NFL because most of our young people are never ever really introduced to concepts that relate to powernomics. They don't understand the game they're playing. Maybe when they're like 40 and their career's over and they're reflecting on some things that happened that didn't make sense, then they figure it out. But when they're 23, 24 years old, they're only thinking about getting on the football field. And the only concept of power that I think they're introduced to is physical power, the power of one man to tackle another man or to be physically stronger than another man, when really you're operating within a context of a space where that has power dynamics written all over it by virtue of the fact of, among many things, about why the black men are on the football field banging their heads into each other to the point where they're going to have brain damage. 99% of them, 99% of NFL players get CTE. So don't act like you're going to be the one player that didn't get brain damage. No, you just got to hope that your CTE is not so bad that one day you wake up and don't want to go out and kill somebody or want to go or get depressed or can't remember how to get home to your house. Like 99% of NFL players have CTE. That's just a fact. Right, it is fine. I mean, if you still want to play football after knowing that, that's okay. I get it. Who knows? I've never got a chance to play for the Cowboys. I would have loved to play for the Dallas Cowboys, even knowing that I'd probably get CTE. That's how much we love football. I get it, but just know that 99% of these players are going to get brain damage. You just got to hope that your brain damage is manageable brain damage, but you're going to get it. Everybody gets it. That's just a fact. Look up the data. You don't believe me? Look it up. And then the other aspect of the power dynamic is that while the black men are on the field, hustling hard, non-guaranteed contracts, taking brain damage, risking paralysis, all these things that could happen to them, this old fat white man is sitting up in the owner's box sipping champagne with his side chick, just watching the game, enjoying the game. You're going to make maybe, if you're lucky, maybe you'll make $20,000 from playing in that game or $50,000 or something like that. He's going to make a couple million. He makes $2, $3, $4, $5 million every single time that football team gets on the field. The Dallas Cowboys, owned by Jerry Jones, are worth $8 billion. He bought the Dallas Cowboys for $150 million many, many years ago. He's always going to be the highest paid person on the payroll. And I could go down the Dallas Cowboys payroll and show you several players make Dak Prescott. He's going to pay Dak Prescott $40 million. He's going to pay these other guys $20 million, $12 million. I mean, if you look at the Cowboys payroll, you just constantly see all these people that are going to get $5, $10, $12 million. So they're going to do well. It's going to be good for them. But none of these people will make as much money as Jerry Jones. How does that happen? I mean, is that fair? Is that fair? That Jerry Jones does none of the work and gets all the money? No, it ain't fair. But in the world of powernomics, don't nobody care about what you think is fair. No matter. So you decide what you make up your own fair. It's whether or not you made plans strategically to manifest the reality that you want to see. Did you create a space where the unfairness, which is inevitable, just like CTE is inevitable for NFL athletes, well, unfairness is inevitable in the real world. So the best you can do is accept unfairness and say, how am I going to create a space where the unfairness works in my favor, where it works in the favor of my family? Well, at the Chicago Bears, the Hallis family that still owns the Bears, they bought the Chicago Bears for $100 100 years ago. And now the Hallis family has a $5 billion team that they own, maybe $6 billion. If they tried to sell the Bears, they probably get $6-7 billion for that team. And is that fair? No, it ain't fair. But they rigged the game long ago. They were thinking ahead. They thought as investors. Whoever it was, whoever the smart visionary was in that family that bought the Chicago Bears for $100 was thinking, okay, life is not fair, but I'm going to make an investment and a sacrifice right now so that in a couple of generations, all this horrible unfairness that exists in this world is going to work in the favor of my family. My grandkids are going to have a tremendously unfair system that works heavily in their favor. And that requires planning, vision, strategy, and understanding the power dynamics that come with ownership and wealth. So ownership should be the number one thing on the mind of your kids. It should be the number one thing that your family's thinking about. Like, the ownership and the vision necessary to develop ownership and creating spaces where you are powerful. Is to me, that's the most important thing you can do. And it gets distracted because we get these myths that are fed to us that encourage us to go operate and live in spaces that are hugely disadvantaged, or put us at a huge disadvantage to those who have all the power structure. I just believe deeply that you should never play a game that you can't win. You shouldn't play games you can't win. So I'm not going to go and try to go and become an employee of Jerry Jones, because I don't want to have this raggedy old man telling me what to do. I'm not even going to have the conversation. I'm going to say, no, I'll be over here. There's certain people I don't do business with. There's certain spaces I don't want to operate in ever, because I don't want to walk into a space where the unfairness, which is inevitable, is going to be rigged against me, because I never believed in fair. And if you're black and you believe in fairness, then what's going to happen is you're going to be frustrated your whole life. You're going to be screaming and hollering your whole life about how this ain't right and that ain't right and they doing me wrong and they did this wrong and they did that. Yeah, they're going to keep on doing you wrong because you don't have any power. If you ever want to fix the unfairness problem in your life, find a way to get some power. And the first place that power starts, in my view, is it starts with internally. Like, I'm going to reclaim, everything that's valuable around me, every ounce of my labor, every ounce of my spending power, every ounce of my intellect, every ounce of my free time. I'm going to regain control of me. That's going to be my first step toward power. I don't have to have power over other people, but this entity, this asset that is called me, I'm taking complete control over this asset, and no one is going to benefit from this asset more than me and the people I love. That means if I work for you, it's going to be because I care about you. It means if I spend my money with you, it's going to be because I want to see you win. It means if I spend my time with you, it's because I want to see you successful. That's what you do. Start with the resources that matter in your life that are valuable to you. It's as basic as little things like, if you're a woman, don't be sleeping with raggedy men who don't value you. Your power, your body is a valuable asset. You don't give it to somebody who isn't gonna appreciate it. You save it for the right man that's gonna reciprocate and take care of you in the way that you want to be taken care of. Even if your goal is only to get some good loving, right? Whatever it is, you gotta save that for the person that's gonna appreciate and reciprocate, right? When you go spend your money, I'm spending my money with black businesses or with businesses that are related to family. I'm going to look around in my family, see what businesses they have. That's where I spend my money first. I'm going to be very intentional. If I go spend time on something, I'm going to spend time. I do this in my life, by the way, in case you don't know. I don't get on the phone. I'm not going to even give you 15 minutes on the phone if I don't see how somehow this conversation is going to benefit somebody in my circle. Either me or the people that I care about. Seriously, I promise you, I can't tell you how many times I've turned down the chance to talk on the phone with various celebrities because I said, where's this conversation going? This isn't going to benefit me or the people I work with. This isn't going to benefit my family. I'm giving that time. My time is rare. I'm giving that time to my kids and my wife. I'm giving that time to my mama. I'm giving that time to my business. I'm giving that time to Boyce. I'm giving that time to my homies that I know have my back. That's who I'm giving the time to. You're not getting access to my time if I don't feel like this is going to operate in a powernomics framework. A lot of powernomics is very much built on ideas that relate to what you might call nationalism a little bit. It's a nationalist kind of ideology. It doesn't mean it can't have a globalist aspect to it, but the nationalism comes in the sense that you, and Malcolm would agree with this. The nationalism kind of comes in where it says, okay, if any move I make, any resource I offer anyone else, anything I do for other people, I need to understand how it's going to come back and serve the people that I care about. Not just me, not just myself, but at the very least, is it going to benefit my family? Is it going to benefit my community? Is it going to benefit people that I care about? And if you just apply that particular ideology, then you'd be stunned at how that changes how you view everything that you do. So let me read a little bit more here, and then I want to get back to this whole conversation about the NFL player. So what Dr. Anderson says on page 137 in the book Powernomics, which you can get a copy at powernomics.com, he says, as implied earlier, civil rights in the United States isn't what it used to be, nor does it reflect the original laws and legal precedents. Today, the term civil rights applies to the freedom and rights of all members of our society, especially minorities. However, that was not the original intent of the term. When the term civil rights was first used at the close of the Civil War, it referred to freedom and economic rights of black slaves as ratified in the civil rights laws of 1865 and 1866. How many of y'all knew that? How many of you knew that the term civil rights, it wasn't meant for gay people. It wasn't meant for white feminists. It wasn't meant for every immigrant coming from every country on earth. Civil rights was related to the Civil War and black slaves. They watered it down and then taught you a different definition of that in school when they were indoctrinating / brainwashing you. And you came to the conclusion that civil rights are for everybody. Civil rights were not designed for everybody, according to Dr. Anderson. They were designed for free slaves who they never did right by free slaves. The radical Republican sponsors of these laws knew that economic rights were far more critical to newly freed slaves than social and political rights. So they knew that the economics mattered. In 1865, Congressman Thaddeus Stevens framed civil rights as an economic issue, saying that black people could only be slaves or free without at least 40 acres of land, a mule, and $100 for an economic base. Blacks would forever be slaves. So pay attention. Let's read that last little part. It says, without at least 40 acres of land, a mule, and $100 for an economic base, blacks would forever be slaves. So let's talk about slavery. Let's talk about slavery. What is the definition of being what does it mean to be a slave? Let's look up the definition of a slave. Let's see. Let's look at the formal definition, not chattel slavery, but let's look at the definition. A slave is a person who is forced to work for and obey another, and is considered to be their property, an enslaved person. Okay, so you're not anybody's property but your own. But give me a yes or no if you feel that black people are forced to work for others and obey others. How many of you feel that there are a lot of us that don't do what we want to do? We don't, when we do work, we're working for other people. The first thing you're trained to do when you're a kid is get a job. And then the way you're put into slavery is you start off with no assets through an inheritance, no life insurance policy, nobody left you any money, and then also you go deep in debt because you go to college to a big white university, and then you owe them $100,000. You don't know how to repay it, so you have to go to work. So effectively, you have no choice. When you have no choice, you are effectively a slave. That is slavery. When someone says, "Hey, let's get up and go to the movies today," and you can't, you say, "Oh man, I can't. I got to go to work." Well, then what you're basically saying is, I'm a slave and slaves have to work. Slaves can't go to the movies, not today, because if I try to do what I want to do, then the consequences are going to become unbearable for me. And the problem with slavery, and the reason you have to be very conscious about it, is that capitalism in general has a lot of little tricks to kind of lure you into various forms of slavery. Not just black people, but also white people too. But really black people, because we're at this huge economic disadvantage. So where you have to be kind of careful is not just because it lures you in, but also slavery can cause you to be in situations where you have to make terrible, terrible choices. And why? Well, because you never learned powernomics. You never learned how to shape the dynamics of the power in your space or in your environment to a point where the unfairness works in your favor. Where if somebody's going to be a slave, it's going to be them and not you, right? And power and freedom are kind of connected. A free person may not be a powerful person in the traditional sense of having power over other people, but a free person at the very least has power over himself. When I decide I'm going to do something, I'm going to do it when I want to do it, how I want to do it, who I want to do it with, all of that, right? So power and freedom are deeply connected. Maybe power goes a little bit broader, where you actually have the ability to influence others and things like that. But power really starts with freedom of choice and freedom of speech and all these freedoms that we claim to take for granted that really don't exist if you don't have what they say in this book, which is an economic base. So let's get back to football. So why do you think let's start here. If I go to any classroom in America filled with little black boys, and I say, what do you want to be when y'all grow up? What do you think those little boys are going to say? At least half of them. Where do you think I'm going with this? Answer me in the chat. What future profession do you think most of these little boys are going to say? I saw a guy that was interviewing little black boys in the hood who don't have an economic base. And they asked 3 of them, what do you want to be when you grow up? First one said, I want to be a football star. The second one said, I want to be a football star. The third one said, I want to be a football star. Like literally, that was what all 3 of them said. I want to be football, football, football. So where does that come from? So pay attention now. Let's say that I went to these schools and I said, hey, you know what, guys, let's have a talk. Let me show you some data on the number of NFL players that end up broke or on drugs from all the painkillers that they make you take in order to stay on the field, or end up with brain damage to the point where they're doing, they can't remember their kids' names and they're doing terrible things. What do you think would happen? Do you think that I would be able to talk those boys out of their love for football by giving them this information? Like, do you think that they would say, gosh, wow, I yesterday I really wanted to play for the Dallas Cowboys one day, but man, since I heard Dr. Boyce Watkins, I don't think I want to do that anymore. And what if I told them that the average life expectancy in America is 77 years, but the average life expectancy for an NFL athlete is 59.6? Did y'all hear what I just said? What do you think about? What if I told them that? Do you think that would change their mind? You think that they'd say, I see the light now, thank you. No, it wouldn't work. It would not work at all. It would not work at all. And so why? So we know part of the reason it wouldn't work. But also remember, what they said in this book is very much connected to the point I'm making here. He says here that without 40 acres of land, a mule, and $100 for an economic base, blacks would forever be slaves. So a lot of young kids that want to go to the NFL and get the brain damage and the paralysis and the injuries and everything else and risk death practically on the field, it comes from the fact that they don't have an economic base. So as a result of not having an economic base, you go find Jerry Jones, this big racist billionaire, and you say, Mr. Jones, I ain't got no money. I'm from the hood. My only way out of the hood is football. So will you sign me to a contract? And Jerry, fair enough. He might sign you to a nice contract if you're good. If you're 1 in a million, if you like CeeDee Lamb or something, or Dak Prescott, he'll give you a lot of money to go out on that field. Now, most of the players don't get that kind of money, but he'll pay you well if you're in a position to help him win some games. And so next thing you know, you're engaged in the very scary, desperate act of risking lifelong paralysis, risking death in order to make money, because that is the only way you know how to get ahead financially. You don't have any sort of economic base. More importantly, you don't have a capital base. It's not, and the reason I distinguish those two terms is because, remember, economic capital is only one form of capital. Capital is not just money. Capital is not just money. Sometimes the capital base might be a cultural capital. Sometimes the capital base might be intellectual capital, like Dr. Myron Rolle. Hold on, give me a second. Let me give a shout out to Dr. Myron Rolle. Dr. Myron Rolle sent me his book. It's called The 2% Way. Now, how many of y'all know who Myron Rolle is? Give me a yes if you've heard this name, Myron Rolle. All my football fans definitely know who he is. And ladies, or anybody who doesn't watch football, you need to know about this brother. He's not just super sharp and he's a smart, handsome man. He was a damn good football player. Myron Rolle played for Florida State. He was an All-American football player who was going to get drafted in the first round of the NFL draft. And Myron blew their minds. Myron literally told the NFL, I don't really want to play right now. I want to go become a Rhodes Scholar. A Rhodes Scholar, in case you don't know, that's pretty prestigious. It's hard to be a Rhodes Scholar. You got to be the smartest of the smart. And he went to England and studied for 2 years. And they're like, whoa, what are you doing? Black men don't do that. Black men are supposed to be slaves because black men don't have any form of a capital base. We're supposed to be your only option. Like a pimp. A pimp is like, where are you going, ho? Like, you're supposed to depend on me, right? So, but Dr. Myron Rolle had a capital base. And the translation is that he had options. I use the word options a lot. I talk about stock options, which are just basically the same as options. He had options. Myron said, yeah, football's fun and I'm good at it. I know that, but I'm good at a lot of things because I got a capital base. I have an intellectual capital base. I have a cultural capital base. I have a spiritual base. Somebody told me as a little boy, yeah, you can run fast. You can run the 40-yard dash in 4.3 seconds, but you also have a very high IQ. You also have the ability to be extremely successful at a lot of things because you have work ethic, which is it's hard to play football at that level without having a good work ethic. So my Dr. Myron Rolle, and I love this guy. He sent me a copy of his book. He reached out to me on Twitter, and I respect him immensely. And this is his book. This is why I'm showing y'all his book, The 2% Way. And I hope everybody will go take a look at it. And so he goes off to become a Rhodes Scholar, and then he came back to the NFL and tore it up. I don't know how many years he was in the NFL, but he did extremely. He was all pro. Like, he was one of the best defensive backs in the entire NFL. So to me, that was the ultimate flex. But Myron said, look, I'm going to play football with you, Jerry Jones, or whoever I'm playing for. I'm going to play football with you because I want to, which is very different from me playing football for you because I have to. I have power. This man had power. He had the power to say, screw all of y'all. I'm going to do it the way I want to do this. If we don't do it my way, then we ain't going to do it. And so that to me is beautiful because that's a powernomics kind of move. That's him saying, I get to choose what spaces I'm going to be in. You're not going to decide whether or not I choose to get out here and put my life on the line as an NFL player. He made that choice to get out there, and he knew what the risks are and all that. And I'm sure he's probably got some injuries or whatnot from playing football or whatever. But still, he made that decision on his own, and he didn't make it because he was a broke kid from the hood who could only read at a second grade level, who had 8 babies, mamas, and a bunch of bills to pay and $100,000 in student loans and no other options. He didn't make that choice because he had to do it. You know what I'm saying? So ultimately, this sentence is really powerful. Congressman Thaddeus Stevens had it right. He said, look, if you send black people out here without an economic base, then you might as well leave them on the plantation. They're going to be slaves. A lot of NFL players are slaves. And the thing about it is that they're in a position where they're in this horribly abusive relationship with the team owners, where it's one of those relationships where you ever see those relationships where somebody says, well, if I don't want you, nobody will. Or if you leave me, you ain't never going to find nobody like me. That's what that relationship is. And it plays out every single day. So you have the NFL guys. There was one guy, I'm going to try to find his picture. I'm going to find his picture because this is really, y'all need to see this guy. He was a wide receiver. He was for the Chiefs. And he was let me see if I can show y'all this picture. I gotta show y'all this. Let me see here. Let me see if I gotta find it. I think he was a wide receiver. Here we go. No, dang it. Okay, let me try one more time. Hold on, let me see. Football player. So let me tell you what was going on. So this player, he wanted to get a job with the Kansas City Chiefs, and he had no other options. And I can't find his the picture of him, but he stood. Here's what he did because he was so desperate to get a job playing football. He stood out in front of the stadium every morning, and he held a sign up that said, "We'll play for food," or something like that, or "We'll run routes for food." I kid you not. And I remember thinking, I feel so bad for this poor guy because somebody told him that he was nothing but a football player. And in a powernomic sense, he's in this incredibly vulnerable position where you can't even keep your dignity because you don't have any options and you have no form of a capital base to protect you from having to literally go out into the world as a beggar. And this is what happened when they didn't listen to Thaddeus Stevens and give black people their 40 acres and a mule. A lot of your black men ended up as beggars. They ended up basically out, and women too. They ended up, your children, they ended up basically begging. And so let me see. I'm gonna show y'all this picture. And I'm not even gonna say the guy's name because I don't want to embarrass him like that. But here's his picture, and you can see here that he's holding up this sign. He's a big, strong. Look at this. That's a big, strong black man. Big, strong black man. Extremely fast and talented and everything else. Got the beard. I'm sure y'all ladies look at him. He's a handsome man. I'm sure he's sexy to y'all. I don't know what a handsome man necessarily looks like. I don't think that way, but I imagine he's got some things that the ladies would appreciate. But how do you feel when you see a big, strong black man like that out there begging, literally getting on his knees for white people to take care of him because he can't take care of himself? Does that make him more sexy? Does that make him more appealing to you? Like, would you feel proud, like if that was your husband or something, or like the provider for your family, the man of your house, and he's literally begging? He's holding up a sign. The sign says, "Not homeless, but starving for success. Will run routes for food." Does that make you proud, or how does that make you feel? It doesn't make me proud. It makes me feel very sad, and I get it. Here's the thing. When he did this, though, a white America held him up in the media as like some sort of a hero. Like they were really proud of him. They're like, "Oh, that boy is that's determination. That's determination. Look at him. He's so that inspires me that he's so determined to get a position that he's willing to humble himself in that way." And I guess that's how they feel because that's what they want. They want that black man on his knees begging a white man, his supposed equal. He used to be your equal, but he's not your equal anymore. He's now your God. He's now your older brother. He's the alpha, you're the beta, and that's the position you're taking. And so they like to see that. They think that's good because that's what a racist society does. It teaches you what your place is. Your place is not to be in the owner's box. Your place is not to run the team. Your place is not to control the organization. Your place is to stand out front and hold a sign up that says, "We'll run routes for food." And then if they decide to give you an opportunity, you take it. And that comes from the vulnerability, the slavery that comes from not having an appropriate capital base. Imagine this. Do you think that he will be out there? So think about it like this. If he had enough education where he could go out and make really good money doing something else, do you think that he would be holding up that sign saying, "We'll run routes for food"? If he had, a $500,000 trust fund that somebody left him in an inheritance or a life insurance policy from his father or whomever, like, do you think that he'd be out there standing in front of the stadium saying, "We'll run routes for food"? Do you think that if he had any sort of self-esteem, self-respect, I'm sorry, I don't want to sound too biased, but that's how I feel. I'm sorry. Do you think that he will be out there holding this sign up saying, "We'll run routes for food"? Now, I get it. I understand if you're willing to try out for the team. I understand you go to the combine, you're willing to do the hard work, all that. So that's great. But when you get to the point where you are looking just flat out desperate, that really speaks to the fact that you didn't really position yourself, or somebody didn't position you to have multiple options. And so when I see NFL players, and I feel so bad for a lot of these guys, because a lot of them, unfortunately, were trained and bred to believe that the only thing they can really do is play football. And I wonder what that would look like if they had a lot of options. So for example, our kids, they don't have to do that. Our kids have parents that have money and they have plenty of education and all this other stuff. Again, my son that I'm his bonus dad, me and his father raised him together. We both love this kid. He's 6'8". He's 6'8". And everywhere he goes, people always look at him and say, "Ooh, you play basketball? Or why would you waste all that height when and not play basketball?" Well, it's because he's got options. We've told him since birth, like, yeah, you're tall. You can probably go out there and dunk without jumping, but who cares? You don't have to go play basketball. It's not like you're trying to get out of the hood. You live in the suburbs. You got a nice house. You're fine. Like, I can show you how to invest. I can show you how to do a lot of things that don't involve you necessarily having to go out and play sports. Right. So with football, I think that choice is really important because these little boys are that's your $1 trillion asset. Your black men are a $1 trillion asset. So effectively, what football has done is it's put you in a position where you're exporting your $1 trillion asset and you're selling them pretty cheap, because you should actually, with that much talent, you should own a league or something like that. And you're exporting your $1 trillion asset really cheap, and then also that asset is being put at tremendous risk. The reward risk reward ratio does not balance out. Most NFL players are getting this brain damage. Years later, they can't even get a basic pension, and I was stunned when I found out. I couldn't believe it. I read. Can you guess? Try to guess. And I got to double check this number because I couldn't believe it. But there was a brother in Cleveland. I forgot his name, but he did a really good commentary, and he was talking about the amount of money NFL players get in their pension if they live to 55. Mind you, the average lifespan of NFL players is only 59.6 years old. Most of them don't even receive their pension, or if they get it, they don't get it for very long. Guess how much the pension is for NFL players, like per month. Guess how much they receive per month in their pension? Dwayne said 55,000. Nope, that's too high. Well, give me the number per month. Let's do the monthly number. Okay, let's see. Okay, some of y'all get some really low numbers, 900, 1,000, 5,000. It's in between those numbers. It's $3,000 a month, $36,000 a year. That's it, $36,000 a year. So to me, obviously it's not fair. Obviously it's an insulting number. And the thing that capitalism kind of does is capitalism says, yeah, it ain't fair, but what you gonna do about it? What you gonna do about it? And if you've never read books like this, if you don't understand powernomics, then you say, oh, nothing. I'm just gonna go back to work and I'm gonna do what I'm told. But if you understand powernomics, then you say, oh, hell no. We're gonna go in here, we're gonna make some sacrifices, we're gonna make some investments, we're gonna lay out a long-term vision so that we can create a new game that is rigged in our favor. And when you look at the NFL is rigged in the favor of people who own the teams. Most of these teams were bought for a few $100s. Somebody made a sacrifice. Somebody, there were original owners who could have probably went off and did other things. They could have gotten a good job, but instead they bought these teams, and they bought them for maybe $200, $150 or whatever. But that was their big power play. They poured into this asset called the NFL, this newly formed league that nobody gave a damn about, and they made this thing into something special. And once they did that, then everybody wanted to be a part of that, and that's when their wealth started to grow. So the question becomes this. Black people, we already know everybody loves and to follow you and pay attention to you and copy off you. The former CEO of the Air Jordan brand, Larry Miller, who came to the All Black National Convention, he specifically told me, he said, we pay very close attention to what urban Black males are wearing because that helps us understand what the rest of the world is going to be interested in. I hope Larry doesn't mind me sharing that point. And so you already got the juice. You've got the juice. You've got the cool factor, the culture that everybody wants. Your women our women are beautiful, the most beautiful women in the world. Our men just have a swag that is unmatchable. We have athletic abilities that are unshakable. Entertainment, we're just the best. So you've got the commodity. What I think you have to really process, though, is how to control that commodity. And let me give an example of what it means to control a commodity in a powernomics fashion in a way that benefits you. First, you got to get your head out of the nonsense that you were taught in the school system about, equality and working for people and all that. That's BS. That's stupid. That stuff sets you backward. You got to unbrainwash yourself with that. But second of all, Indonesia happens to have a tremendous amount of nickel, nickel in the ground. Well, nickel is heavily used for electric vehicles. All the electric vehicle companies in this hugely emerging economy are dying to get the nickel. They're all competing to get access to the nickel that's around the world. Well, Indonesia said, oh, we got something you want? We have $1 trillion asset that you want to get your hands on? Okay. So what they did was they did a couple of things that were very powernomicsy. Number one, they said, well, if you want to use our nickel, you got to build your plant right here in Indonesia. You can't export our nickel out of the country. Or this commodity doesn't leave our hood. It ain't gonna leave our neighborhood. It's not leaving Indonesia. So if you want to make your cars with our nickel, you need to build your plant right here. That means we're not coming to you. You're coming to us. We're not coming to work for you. You're coming to work for us. Our commodities are not leaving the house. They're staying right here. Imagine if we said, as Black people, we have the best athletes. You want our athletes? Well, then we got to own a piece of the league. We got to the sports teams got to be, created in such a way that that we have control over how our athletes are going to be used. Like a mama negotiating with a college football coach and saying, if you want my son to come play at your school, you're going to have to get me a new house and you got to do this, and you got to do that. Nothing's wrong with that. Nothing's wrong with that. You got to learn how to play hardball. Instead of saying, thank you, master, you got to say, I got leverage in my favor. I'm not giving up my leverage until I'm sure that it's going to benefit me long term. Oh, you want me to come work for you now? You want me to come play for you? Whatever. Sign me to a long-term contract that's going to give me financial security for the rest of my life, and then I might consider connecting with whatever you got going on. The other thing, the other powernomics aspect of it was it was the Indonesia nickel thing. There's one more thing I wanted to make to impress on you to share, but I can't remember what it was. I lost my thoughts, so forgive me for that. But ultimately, the ability to control your resource is absolutely critical to being able to be in a good powernomics position. With Black people, because we're trained to work for other people, we just let our resources go. We send our best entertainers, our best athletes, our best minds, our all of our labor, and it's all being sort of scattered everywhere. And we're letting the other entity kind of define the terms. And that really shows a lack of strategic thinking in terms of institution building. If you can develop institutions, then you can take those resources and apply them yourself. Another example, when our son got to be 18, 19, and it was time to go to college, I said, yeah, you can go to college. That's fine. And you can get a degree and go get a job. But guess what? We got a business right here. And I know how smart you are. And I could use some help. So it's all those hours of labor that you're going to go put into running a white man's business. How about you pour those hours of labor into the family business? And then that way the family will benefit from that commodity that is you. So so your children are a multi-million-dollar commodity, whether you know it or not. You just have to understand the power of the commodity and what to do with the commodity. Like a lot of us don't know what to do. We're like, oh, well, I don't know how to create a job, so I don't know what to, all I can do is send you away. It's like in Guyana, for example. Guyana, a very poor country, just found out they have a ton of oil in the ground. They have more oil than almost every country on earth. And all these companies are coming along from other countries saying, ooh, we can drill the oil, we can drill the oil, we can drill the oil. And what they say, which makes sense, is they're like, look, you don't know what to do with all that. You got all that oil. You don't know how to get that stuff out the ground. We can do that for you, right? So maybe one of the things Guyana could do in a long-term play is learn how to drill their own oil so that you don't have to let other people come in and drill it for you and take what they want. That's why Nigeria, I'm 40% Nigerian. I'm Igbo, by the way. I'm very proud of that. That's why in Nigeria, they have more oil than damn near every country on the planet, but an insane amount of poverty. That is absolutely ridiculous. That is very poor strategic planning on the part of the people who control that country. It's damn near corruption. That's really what it is. And Nigerians known for being corrupt. I love the country that I'm connected to, but my lord, they got to kill that. So ultimately, when you're talking about the NFL power play, I think you have to have visionaries who understand institution building. You have to have the willingness to make a sacrifice. Everybody can't sort of every man for himself, making as much money as I can right now. You have to think, what is the long-term play that will allow you to be in a position for long-term ownership and control? And then the game gets rigged into your favor, and then you start to win the game. Surprise, surprise. When a biased game is rigged in your favor, then guess what? You're going to emerge the winner. I know that's hard. I know that's complicated. I know people don't get that, but literally that's all it is. So all the world really is, the world of economics, is a bunch of rigged games where they pretend like they're fair. And then somehow it always ends up with a certain group of people always end up with the money. It's because of how they position themselves in that game. So where are you going to position yourself? Where are you going to position your kids? What are you going to teach them? All right. So, by the way, I'm reading from the book Powernomics. Powernomics. You can go to powernomics.com to get a copy of Dr. Anderson's book. And I actually wrote a new book recently. If you want to go take a look, it's called The 10 Commandments of Black Economic Power. It's available on Amazon. You can go to boycewatkins.com. And that's another place you can pick up a copy of the book. So feel free to get a copy. It's designed to focus on economics from a cultural standpoint in terms of what does an economically powerful culture actually look like, and how do you create that in your own family with very simple rules that everybody follows in order for you to be able to stay on code and to contain the resource that's there. Right. So if you look at Indonesia and the way they're controlling their nickel, that is basically Indonesia applying some rules from Powernomics and the 10 Commandments of Black Economic Power. They're basically operating on code. They're saying we're making a law, we're structuring a set of principles that says Nickel does not leave our country. China does that too. China, in order to protect their currency. When I taught my class in China, I had a problem. I came to China and I got paid to teach in China, and it was real weird. They paid me like a drug dealer. They gave me a big old envelope full of money, and I think I got $10,000 to teach a class for 5 days in China. And so they gave me this big old envelope full of money, and when I got to the airport, I couldn't take the money home. Why? Well, because China has laws that say you can't take our currency out of the country. You can't do that because that's going to dilute the value of our currency. So the same thing that China does to keep its currency from leaving the country. Pay attention now. Maybe you got to keep your talented black people from leaving the community. Do you follow what I'm saying? Do you hear what I'm saying here? I'm not saying that you got to like get mad at people when they do what they want to do. I get it. But every time a talented black person leaves the black community and goes and works for a white person, you're losing wealth that way. You just are. I'm not saying that it's bad. I mean, we're all trained to do it. But just because you were trained to do it don't make it right. And you got to look at who's doing the training. Who was training you? How many of you were educated by a black woman who loved you, or educated by black men who really cared about you and the black community? Very few of you. Most of you were probably educated like I was by a bunch of white people who didn't give a damn about me, whose goal it was to teach me how to fit into the system. And that's not, that may be good for them. It's very good for them. It makes sense. It makes sense for them to do that. It didn't make sense for me. So let me keep reading here. Here's what Dr. Anderson says on page 137. He says the Black Civil Rights Movement of the 1960s developed around the search for social and political rights for everybody, especially for minorities. It lost focus on black people and economics. The social achievements of the Black Civil Rights Movement are not without merit. It did help black Americans socially, but hamstrung blacks economically by one, diverting an economic issue to social and political goals. You have to understand that. Every time they want to talk about social stuff and political stuff, and they don't want to talk about the economics, they are hurting you. And so number two, it made black people consumers instead of producers. So they want you in the economy. They just want you buying things. They don't want you producing or making things, right? So they need you. It's like the pimp needs the hooker, but the pimp never wants the hooker to try to be the pimp. Right, so he's like, it's not being the prostitute is not a pimp training program. You're not being trained to be a pimp. You're being trained to be a better prostitute so that the pimp can make sure he gets his cut. Number three, the other way black people were hurt is by focusing on the inequality of income rather than wealth. So focusing on income over wealth is where you also lose. Who gives a damn about income? Income does not matter. It only matters to the extent that it impacts wealth. If you have high income and no wealth, then guess what? You worked your butt off with nothing to show for it. Wealth is proof that your income actually arrived and that you actually did something worth doing. Number four, it encourages black people to be job seekers rather than job producers. Five, it espouses an altruism for the world rather than group self-interest. So you're taught to care more about other people than to care about yourself. Number six, ignoring public policies that made blacks impoverished guests in America. Black leadership has a choice. It can lead a national movement back to the original intent of the first civil rights laws, or they can continue to engage in wheel-spinning civil rights issues that ignore the special needs and unique experiences of black people. It is predictable that many black leaders will not be able to change direction. Why? Well, because they're slaves. Going back to that term slaves, when we were talking about slavery earlier, any black leader that is not economically independent is probably a slave to whoever's paying the bills. So when you point to me, you point out a Raphael Warnock or Herschel Walker, it doesn't even matter to me that they're black, because I know they're going to pledge allegiance every day to whoever wrote the $100 million check that they needed to write in order for them to run for office. So the other thing that Dr. Anderson, I'm not going to go too deep into this one, but this is economic action step number 4. Because I like this because this relates to what we were talking about earlier. He says you have to counter the brain drain with businesses that aggressively attract black talent from schools, the government, and corporate America. So you have a brain drain. Every time a talented black person stands out and is generating something good for black people, that person gets bought. They get bought away. University of Colorado calls up and says, "Ooh, we heard what you're doing down there, Prime, and with Jackson State. So we want to pay you a bunch of money that we know black people can't pay. We know Jackson State can't match this because we're white and we print money. They don't print money in Jackson State, but we do. And we want you to come and carry the banner for the University of Colorado. It's all by design, like Dwayne says. I agree, and it makes me furious, not because I don't understand what he did and what the temptation is. It makes me furious because you think that when you do this, you're winning. You think that when this happens, that this is something to celebrate. This is not something to celebrate. This is actually something to mourn. You just lost a multi-million, maybe $1 billion asset. Right? So it doesn't mean that it's a matter of beating up on somebody for making the decision they want to make. But when people say, well, he's just doing what's best for himself and his family, I don't even know if that's the best thing for his family. And really, if you really think about it, if we're all black, then we're kind of all part of each other's family. So if I am feeding 1,000 black people, and I say, I got to go do what's best for me and my family, and I stop feeding 995 of those people, I don't know if that's a win. I don't know if it doesn't mean I can't do it. It just means that those other 995 people are crazy if they're cheering me on as I leave them behind to starve to death. Right? They might say, okay, we get it, we understand, but we're all gonna have a gap now. Now we're all gonna gotta suffer so that you can win, so you can feel good about what you're doing. So I really think this debate had to happen, and I'm glad it happened. And I wanted people to understand both sides of the debate. I didn't need them to agree with me. I don't care if people agree with me. I just need you to hear what I'm saying and understand what's really happening here, and that this happens a million times. And that's why black wealth keeps going down. Because I don't care how much money, going back to Deion Sanders, I don't care how much money he makes at Colorado. That amount of money he makes in Colorado will only be a tiny fraction of the amount of wealth that the black community and him would have made if he built something amazing down, at an HBCU. Really. I mean, again, because it's power. It's about controlling the resource. So what is the power in that case? Let's keep talking about the Deion thing. The power is that you've got the shine, you've got the swag, you've got winning. You're getting multi-million-dollar assets trying to come down and be a part of what you got going on. You're doing what the NFL did. The NFL, nobody gave a damn about the Green Bay Packers when they first got started. They were like, what the hell is a Packer? Nobody knows what a Packer is. You have to make people care what a Packer is. So once they built the Green Bay Packers brand up and it became $1 million, billion-dollar brand, then suddenly people care about the Packers. Now the TV networks want to cover the Packers. Now the fans want to come to the stadium with the Packers. Now you got a whole community that loves the Packers, right? So that you got millions and billions of dollars of Packers merchandise being sold because you branded the Packers, right? So the same thing is true with being down in Jackson State. Maybe when you get there, nobody really is thinking about Jackson State or HBCUs. Five-star athletes are not trying to go to Jackson State originally. TV networks aren't trying to cover Jackson State. But because you're there and because what you got going on is so awesome, now you got ESPN Game Day coming down there. First time they ever covered an HBCU game, if I'm not mistaken. That's a multi-million-dollar move. You got five-star athletes, each of them worth at least $100 million a piece, wanting to come down and be a part of what you got going on in Jackson State. Then you get the TV networks. Then you get the corporate sponsors that all want to write $10 million checks to be able to be a part of what you got going on in Jackson State. You got TV networks that want to do multi-million-dollar deals. So now you're creating all this wealth. Why? Well, because you have breathed life, economic life, into something that didn't have life before. Let me give you an example. I got invited to a party. It was an Air Jordan party. The Air Jordan, I told you, Larry Miller, the CEO of Air, he's the chairman of the board now, the Air Jordan brand. He's a good buddy of mine. I love this guy. He invited me and my wife to this party, and there were a lot of famous people at the party. And when I got to this party, it was during All-Star Weekend. I went and sat down, and these celebrity parties are so cool because they always have this little really neat, fancy stuff around. So me and my wife sat down, and they had this place where you could eat. Like these restaurants were set up, and they have the real good food. So we ate like 5 different restaurants because they have little tiny plates of meals or food or whatever. So I was sitting there eating, and I was sitting next to a guy. And he was some arrogant white guy. I don't know who he was. And I said, "Oh, so what do you do?" And I didn't tell him what I did or anything. I was curious about him. And he said, "Oh, I created Beats by Dre headphones." I kid you not. He said I designed that. I created that brand. And I said, "Wow, that's really impressive. Because here's the thing about Beats by Dre headphones. From what I understand, most of the people I know that are really into like headphone quality will say that Beats by Dre headphones aren't that much better in terms of quality from other headphones that might be one third or one fifth the price. But if you look up Beats by Dre headphones now, they're gonna be, they're gonna cost you hundreds and hundreds of dollars. And I said, what you all did to make Beats by Dre headphones relevant, cool, and valuable was really powerful. And I remember watching how they took something no one cared about. They took these little headphones that were no different from any other headphones out there, and you know what they did? They started connecting their brand to other things, other valuable entities that people respected. They started getting these celebrities, Serena Williams and LeBron James and Lil Wayne, wearing Beats by Dre headphones. And then every time they did that, the value of what they had going on went up and up and up to the point where Beats by Dre became $1 billion company. It was bought by Apple for about $1 billion or something like that. That's how Dr. Dre became a billionaire. So the same thing in my mind, and I thought it was funny, when I talked to the guy, in my mind, I'm thinking, yeah, y'all really y'all really play with people's heads. Y'all trick them into believing that these raggedy headphones are really great. But that's exactly what I kind of saw happening maybe with Deion Sanders being at Jackson State, is that, at that time, honestly, when he got there, maybe a lot of people didn't want to go to an HBCU. Five-star athletes were not lining up to be connected to an HBCU. There wasn't a lot of economic value there when you compare it to playing for the University of Alabama and being on national TV. But because he was there and because they were winning and because it became the coolest thing in the world, suddenly they were attracting all this financial energy, all this economic energy, to the point where I really would speculate. I would be willing to bet you that let's say that I sat down, a guy like me sat down with a Deion Sanders and said, okay, you're going to stay at Jackson State. How are we going to make you, $100 million in the next 10 years with you being right here? We could put that plan together. That could happen. That could actually be done. I've seen that happen. But the thing is, though, that you have to have a certain ability to understand how powernomics works, how economics works. And this is where my PhD can maybe help some people. I don't know. But because the thing about it is that most of the time, like if you look at the architects of the NFL and the people that were able to build these billion-dollar brands multi-billion-dollar brands out of nothing, that's what they pretty much did. And I think that if you're talking about a power move, training our children to understand these ideas at an early age, how you can literally almost become what I call an economic god. And actually at the Financial Slumber Party, one of the segments I literally titled when I talk about things we're going to cover at the Financial Slumber Party is how to become an economic god. And if you want to join us on the 13th, just go to boycewatkins.com. It's right there. I told you guys earlier. I'll tell you guys again. We're doing a Financial Slumber Party. And during that event, I will make you the best investor in your family. I will make you the smartest in your family when it comes to the stock market, I guarantee. And we'll also have fun. But anyway, there's a segment I talk about how to become an economic god. And when I think about a god, I think about a person or an individual that can manifest, right? A god can like snap his fingers and, say, let there be light. Or God can just imagine something and then it becomes real. So the ability to become an economic god is the ability to kind of look at something that doesn't have any value and really create value there because you have a certain level of vision. You have vision for the future, but you also have an economic vision where you can see the wealth and the possibilities even when other people see nothing. A lot of people may go to a place and in Silicon Valley, I'll give you an example. In Silicon Valley, the guys that went to create Silicon Valley, when they got there, it was property nobody wanted. It was a bunch of orange groves with nothing there. But they saw value. They became economic guys. They manifest something. So what they did was they went there and they said, we're going to make Silicon Valley the latest place on earth. They went down there. They set up. They said, okay, we see wealth. We see Stanford universities around the corner. Some of the brightest students on the planet are coming out of this institution. That's our $1 trillion move right there. So what we're going to do is we're going to set up shop. We're going to post up right here in this orange grove called Silicon Valley. It wasn't called Silicon Valley at the time. It didn't even have a name because nobody cared about it. And we're going to set up a tech company here, and we're going to recruit kids out of Stanford that before they get that first job, before other people see their value, we're going to recruit them. Those are our kids, and we're going to have them come and work for our tech company, and then we're going to get other companies to come down so they can be near us, and then eventually we're going to create so much wealth, and this is what happened. They created so much wealth there that Silicon Valley actually got to a point where I want to say that for about a 4-year period, a third of the wealth created on the planet was coming out of Silicon Valley. Silicon Valley became so lit economically that you couldn't afford a house in Silicon Valley if you didn't make at least $250,000 a year, because all the property values went up because they brought in all this capital, this human capital, this intellectual capital. All these people wanted to come to Silicon Valley because they're like, whoa, this amazing stuff is happening there. I saw Jackson State as kind of like being the sports version of a Silicon Valley, right? A place where there was nothing there, or no, I won't say nothing. There was something there, but it wasn't what it could have been. But guess what? If you're there and you're bringing in 5-star athletes, you're bringing in multi-million-dollar corporate sponsors, you're bringing in multi-million-dollar TV deals, you're bringing in you're filling up stadiums. Oh, you're creating $1 billion in economic potential there. And then what also occurs is that when all that economic manifestation takes place, but you need a God-like group of people to do that. You have to have people that can tap into their God-like potential to be able to truly manifest, to be able to see that vision before it's there. And that is really an aspect of Black thinking that I think we have to really fight against, because I believe growing up that we were trained to be very reactive to things. We're trained to react to things that are already there, things that are already real, things that have already happened. And that's not how you build wealth. You do not build wealth by reacting to what's there. You build wealth by being able to visualize what's not there and then putting it there. And then when everybody else gets there, you're already there. You're already posted up. So when these guys that became billionaires in Silicon Valley, they didn't see what was there. They looked at what could be there. And when they built it, then everybody showed up and said, hey, can I get a piece of that? They said, yes, it's going to cost you $100 million to be a part of this. That's what they did with Beats by Dre headphones. They took something that was nothing and they said, this could be great. We could get every Black kid on earth willing to spend $300 for our headphones. We just have to make the right moves and pour into this. And that's what they did. And then suddenly now Dr. Dre has this $1 billion thing that him and Jimmy Iovine, whatever his name is, were able to sell to Apple for $1 billion. Right? So wealth it requires definitely you to be able to see what's not there, see it before everybody else does. It also requires you to have that enough confidence in that vision to pour into that vision. And you have to have that confidence that your God-like ability to manifest is going to create something great. My mother actually gave that to me. Now that I think about it, my mama grew up in the project. She was very poor. She was not a rich lady, didn't know nothing about economics. But one little thing I remember her telling me that really helped me a lot was she used to tell me stuff like anything you put effort into will pay off. Anything that you invest in, this is my translation. She used to say, anything you put effort into is going to pay off. My translation as a 51-year-old man of that statement is, anything I invest in, anything I'm pouring into is becoming more valuable every day because I'm pouring into it. Do you understand? Like it's because I'm, when I'm working with my son and we're working on the business, he might not know how to do nothing. He's just a 19-year-old kid that don't know half of nothing. But if every hour I pour into him and teach him things, I'm making him a more valuable asset for the family. And then sticking with principles that I literally write about in this book, it's like, okay, now let's manage this multi-million-dollar asset that we're building. I'm not going to just build you up and then say, hey, go off and go work for a white man. I'm going to build you up and say, hey, let's do some more partnerships with the family so that the family can benefit from this asset that you're building. We're not here to serve other people. We're here to serve each other and to serve ourselves and to serve our families and our community. That's who we're here to serve. So ultimately, what I think is interesting about us as Black folks, I believe, is that I think that from the time we're born, we're taught to believe that we're supposed to work extremely hard and get nothing from it. I think that's it. I think that we really, on a conscious and subconscious level, are led to believe that we're supposed to suffer and others are supposed to get the benefits. There's even studies that show that even Black people believe that Black people feel less pain than white people. That suffering, that Black suffering is just part of the process, that you're supposed to work. Pay attention. Now think about this. Think about how many people you know who work their whole entire life and then they die and there's nothing to show for it. Not for them, not for the people they leave behind, nothing. It's like you were never here. Like no one is going to remember you. Nobody gives a damn because all that work you put into it went somewhere. That energy is neither created nor destroyed. It just changes hands. So all that economic energy, all that capital, all that hard work, all those mornings, thousands of mornings when you got up at 7 a.m. to go to that job, all that energy is out there somewhere. Somebody built wealth off of that, but you didn't build any wealth. And you're not asking like, well, where did all the money go? Where did the wealth go? Wait, why is my bank account not going up? Why is his going up but mine isn't? And I think about that. So I think just really sort of processing things in that way, and really sort of believing in this idea that you should be a beneficiary of the things that you do, which is a very simple concept actually. I think that will go a long way to actually helping your family to build wealth. Like to kind of say, look, I'll be damned if I'm gonna get up every morning and bust my butt every day. I better have something to show for it. But a lot of us we'll work our whole lives. I mean, think about it. If you're 50 years old and you've been working your whole life and you don't have any assets at all, that's not that. It ain't supposed to be like that. It ain't supposed to be like that. So anyway, let me keep going. Let me keep going. And by the way, some of you asked about the financial slumber party. I don't even remember what the price is. I think that there is a small fee, but they throw in like some bonuses and stuff. So if you'd like to join us, just go to boycewatkins.com. The financial slumber party starts at 11 p.m. We're going to go until 2 a.m. And my promise to you is that by the time we're done, you will be the best investor in your family, because I can show you. I'm going to break down 8 principles, 8 myths about stock market investing that just that you can literally use to destroy all of the doubts and misconceptions that your relatives bring to you when they tell you why the stock market is bad and all this other stuff. You'll be able to kind of kill all of that, which will hopefully open the door for them to think more like you and to be able to understand why you're doing what you do. And it's a whole curriculum I had put together called Stock Market Decoded. And I knew we needed to do that because I was looking into all the reasons why Black people don't invest. And I literally broke down these sort of 8 things. And I said, okay, let's break down each myth one by one. And that's what we're going to cover. So if you'd like to join us, just go to boycewatkins.com. You can sign up there. Also at boycewatkins.com, if you'd like to get a 2023 Black Wealth Calendar, simple principles you can put up on your refrigerator. I actually took some of the principles from the 10 Commandments of Black Economic Power in my new book, and I put that actually in the calendar too. So if you'd like to get a calendar and have the principles on your fridge, and just talk to your kids about each one by one, implement that into your culture on a basic level, then feel free to go to boycewatkins.com. That's available too. All right, guys, I'm losing my voice, which means I need to be quiet and stop talking so much. So I'm going to go ahead and shut it down for today. We will be back next week. We will do the summer party is going to be the 13th, Friday the 13th at 11 p.m. So feel free to join us. I'll be in Tulsa that night, but I'm going to post up at the hotel and we'll be able to do our thing. All right. So everybody have a good night. And next Wednesday at 8:30 p.m. Eastern, we're going to go back to book club. We're going to read more of Powernomics. Dr. Anderson's books are at powernomics.com. I hope we will support him. Let's support Dr. Anderson as much as we support white people. This man loves you. He's a good man, and I'm gonna call him actually tomorrow. And I know that he's always talking about you every time we talk, and I just love him like a father. So feel free to go to powernomics.com and let's make it rain on Dr. Anderson and his business, because he's really given a lot to the community. So take care, everybody. Have a good night, and I'll see you guys soon. Take care now. Bye bye.